go ahead and begin, right? And you can put your questions in the chat. Does everybody know where the chat is? Lower left, or just mouse over the bottom of the screen you're looking at and you'll see chat come up. There's also participants. And since there's so few of us right now, let's not go with just muting everybody unless you've got a barking dog, which I will go to mute. And you can just raise your hand if you have a question for Abby, okay? Everybody know about that? The bottom, mouse over the bottom, you see chat, you see participants, you can see who's there. Okay. All right. So everybody knows me. I'm Mary, right? Nana's our Zoom expert and doorman and chat question reviewer. So if you don't feel like asking your question in person, you can always drop it in the chat and she'll be monitoring that as well. And tonight's meeting is a two-pronged meeting. That's why I'm so glad that the people that do the work are here, because that's a big deal for us. I thought just to reflect a little bit, maybe we could talk about what our favorite action was in the last 4 years. Because, I mean, just one, just what your favorite action was in the last 4 years. Because we've done a lot, and you tend to forget that because these last 3 months have been so stressful. And even now, people can't really believe that he's gone and what's going to happen next. We're still got that little bit of dread going. So I want to just remind everybody of one of my favorite actions, which, well, I had so many, right? I did. I mean, we did a lot. We did dozens and dozens of pop-up protests, marches, rallies, meetings with MOCs. We've been, outside their offices, tormenting them outside where they're speaking, just, bird dogging them right and left, and all the letters and stuff that Warren's group, the postcards, there's thousands and thousands, all the doors and the phone calls and the texts that everyone has sent out in all the cycles, all the election cycles. So we've done a whole lot. But I think my favorite was the tax march one, which was early on in kind of late spring. And we had a huge crowd. There's probably about 3 speakers, but the crowd was riled up. Everything was smooth. We had, the guys circling the block with their Trump misspelled signs. I still have those pictures, yelling at us and stuff. But we had peacekeepers back then. So we had enough people on the perimeter of the plaza facing into our people, so that we were ignoring our counter protesters and also taking care of our own people. And it was just such a smooth operation. So I think the tax march or the tax rally one was my favorite. Who wants to go next?
Well, I like them all. So, I like protesting.
Yes, you do. No favorites?
Well,
I like each and every one of them.
I had fun when Mary and I just spontaneously did a protest in front of the post office.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was very good.
Yeah. This was downtown. We also did one on the island, but downtown, people stopped and asked why we were doing it. They didn't know anything about the post office problems. So we actually felt that we were actually able to educate a bit.
Yeah.
That was fun.
That was fun.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
I liked the turkeys, helping over in Hastings, was it, that we did the turkeys? We gave
right. Last year.
Yeah, I was going to say the tax one. That was my favorite of doing a whole bunch of stuff. But the turkey thing was I felt really good about that.
Yeah.
The protest for the historic district was good too.
Oh yeah, that one we did with the historic district, that was a good one too. We had a lot of people lined up all on the street there.
Yep. Anybody else got any favorites? Okay, all right. Okay, well, let me go ahead then and remind everybody that I'm Mary Lawrence. Me and a couple friends, including Karen, in December of 2016, got together at Panera and started Indivisible St. John's. And we had no clue what we were getting into, because by that January 30th meeting, we were completely blown over. And it took us months to dig out from the hundreds and hundreds of emails and stuff. It was just, people were just insane. And so we've been at this for quite a long time. And Nana has been running our newsletter. She's been our editor of our newsletter as a favor for almost a year now, right, Nana? Coming up on a year. And that was only going to be a temporary thing. So, I mean, she just picked it up and made it her own. And she's been doing just a fabulous job. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Abby. Okay. This is the part that you guys got to pay attention to. We put the link, well, because it's going to have great bearing on the second part of our meeting. Okay. Abby is, well, you'll hear from her bio and everything like that, but the new Indivisible guide and where we're going from here for 2021 and beyond. I read it today. It's a really good, positive outlook. It's not any crazy stuff. And there's nobody shouting about defund the police, which has always been problematic for groups in North Florida. So, you know, if you have any questions.
Did you see he was on Rachel Maddow again the other night? Who? The founder of Indivisible.
Yeah, I heard that. Okay, so Abby Tenenbaum is with us. She's kind of in the middle of my screen, but anyway, she attended the College of Charleston, where she got her Bachelor's of Arts in Political Science, yay, with minors in Environmental Studies, double yay, and music, always a good thing, okay? As a student activist, she primarily focused on the intersections of climate and food, which the world seems to start understanding now that, you know, there's a relationship there. She graduated in 2015 and started a year-long position with Green Corps. She organized communities to invest in electric buses across Eugene, Oregon. She worked to add co-sponsors to a statewide GMO labeling bill in Long Island, New York. And she helped register over 8,000 voters in West Palm Beach, Florida in advance of the 2016 elections. Then she took up, okay, wait a minute. No, but she knew she wanted to get back to food, which is dear to just about everybody's heart here, Abby. So you're in good company, right? So she took a position with, what was it called? Oh, the Common Market Southeast. Okay, that's up in Atlanta, and it's very cool. It's a nonprofit food distributor based in Atlanta that connects food like we have here with Northeast Florida, Feed Northeast Florida. And they just connect food from regional family farms with institutional buyers like hospitals, schools, restaurants, and more. And then finally, in November of 2020, she decided she wanted to get back into organizing again. So she got hired as a senior regional organizer with Indivisible, woohoo, where she will be supporting Indivisible groups across Georgia and North Florida, which was always problematic with our last statewide coordinators. They had the whole state, and some of them had other states. I mean, Florida alone by itself is at least a two-person job. So Abby is ours for Georgia and for North Florida. And we have different problems than they have down south. So this is going to be really, really helpful for us, I think. And throughout all this, I just had to say it, Abby, I was going to leave it out, but you've maintained your love of biking and sunshine, cooking for joy, as well as stress relief, and bringing people together, ideally over food, which is perfect for us. So I give you Abby Tenenbaum.
Wow, thank you.
Good, Abby.
So if, Abby, have you actually been to St. Johns County?
I don't think so, not yet.
So,
and if it were more normal times, I would be joining y'all in person, but.
if you enjoy outdoor activities, when you get a chance, make sure you check out GTM NER. It's a real gem that we have in St. Johns County.
Well, when I finally get to come and visit you all, I will be reaching out, not only for where we get to eat food together, but also where we get to, where you recommend I hang out.
Check that out. I think that's what she's GTM Reserve.
I'm going to write it down. Hold on. Okay. I've got it. Well, thank you for that, Mary. And I'm going to not talk for too long. I want to also get to know you all and feel funny that I got that grand introduction and I hardly know you all yet. So I'm going to keep it pretty brief so that we can spend most of this time just like discussing and talking and getting to know each other, what's next, and the latter part of the discussion that Mary wants to get to. But thank you all for having me in this meeting. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited for where we are. I guess as a country, I hope you all have felt a sense of relief the last couple of weeks. I think as we all know, Trump was not the problem in and of itself, and the problem is not over now that he's gone. But the fact that that administration is gone, Georgia turned blue, which of course I'm excited about, and I think bodes well for a lot of just like long-term organizing and grassroots activism across the country, even outside of Georgia. Like there are many things to be excited about. So that, that's what I'm kind of here to chat with y'all about. I'll chat about Indivisible's new guide. I'm actually curious, raise your hand if you've read it yet. And if not, that is totally okay.
Part of it.
Great, so you all can fill in where I love it. Y'all can fill in where I leave things out. Because I'm sure I won't say everything that, hit home with you. So I'm curious what else stuck out to y'all. So let's see, I'm trying to think of where to go next, but I think the other important thing to think about with where we are now is that while the election had a lot of victories, obviously the big one being that Trump is out of office, he was a symptom of a much larger problem, and that is why activism is equally, if not more important now than it was before. Because now is the time when we actually get to build things and not just defend against terrible things.
Can somebody mute this talking?
Yeah.
Sorry, can you all hear me okay?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, great. And I think, depending on where you are, like at the state, local, federal level, there were some wins and there were some losses. And regardless of what happened at your local level, I hope you're able to like celebrate the wins that did happen and some of the changes that are happening. And stick in this fight to whatever extent you feel like you're still able. So to go over kind of like Indivisible's general approach from here, going forward, at least for this year, Indivisible has 5 priority areas for federal policy. And as you know, Indivisible is focused primarily on federal policy, but that's largely also why I, as an organizer, am here, is to kind of be that bridge between all the federally focused work that Indivisible does and the tools and resources and all that stuff that we put out at the federal level, and the reality that you all are activists in your own communities and you've got a ton of ideas about things to do at the local and state level. And we as organizers hopefully help bridge that gap a little bit. So I just want to also point that out too. But so the 5 areas that Indivisible will be focused on in the near future are democracy reform, climate justice, immigration, economic justice, and healthcare. I do want to dwell on democracy reform for a moment, just because that is the early primary priority. I feel like that was very redundant, but the early priority is democracy reform. Because the other stuff we care about, like climate change, COVID relief, healthcare reform, all of that, it can't happen if our democracy continues to be structurally rigged away from what people actually want. So while they're all very important, our early and heavy focus is on democracy reform. And Indivisible is primarily focusing on things that can happen through legislation. So there are some things, like the Electoral College is one that comes up a lot, that largely would require like a constitutional amendment. So it's not that we're not for that, it's just realistically like where we as people have power is over stuff that can be legislated. So there are 3 bills right now that at least passed the last House, and so therefore are very likely to pass this House as well. HR 1, which is For the People Act, and HR 51, which is DC statehood. Both of those were actually, I think, just introduced yesterday into the Senate too, which is really exciting. HR 4 is the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. So the HR 1 and HR 4 together would do so much to just democratize our elections. Automatic voter registration. HR 1 deals with addressing gerrymandering. Like, it's just a super comprehensive democracy reform bill. It's really sad because it's HR 1 because it was the first thing the last House passed and it is their top priority. But as we know, nothing got done the last 2 years because of Republican majority in the Senate. Another big priority of Indivisible early on is ending the filibuster, which is all over the news these days. So I probably don't have to say too much about that. But again, I won't talk for too long, and I look forward to a discussion around all of this. So those are the early priorities. And then, like I said, there are a handful of other areas that are big policy priorities for Indivisible for 2021 and beyond, once we hopefully fix our democracy. So some ways that we will keep encouraging groups to get involved. What y'all are probably most familiar with is, the federally focused work that we encourage people to do around their members of Congress. So your 2 senators and your 1 congressional representative. So yeah, that's the stuff you're used to, the emails that you get from national with the calls to action and that kind of stuff. So that will continue. A new thing that just launched that I'm really excited about, it's actually one of our organizers that was in our sort of Southern pod, our Southern group. She's moved over to our program team, and she's started these working groups. So they're going to be working groups that sort of mirror the 5 policy areas that Indivisible is prioritizing, which again are the democracy, climate, those ones. I'm excited about that because it's basically going to be groups around the country that all have strategic members of Congress, either based on the committees they sit on or interests that they've expressed in one of those 5 areas. Constituents and Indivisible leaders from those districts now have these kind of federally coordinated working groups that are being put together to get all those groups working together, to say we're the 70 districts across the country that are going to be working on democracy reform or whatever it may be, because our member holds this position of power. So anyway, working groups are a new thing, starting at the federal level, but I think the long-term hope is that there will be some tie-ins to state and local work as well with the working groups. Which also kind of ties into the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is state and local work. And that's largely where I, as the organizer, come in to support you, is to help. I mean, you all are brilliant activists in your own right. So you should be as self-sufficient as you want to be and you can be. But I am here to just help support any state and local work that you want to do and help translate some of our knowledge and tools and strategy from the national level down to the stuff that you really know in your community that you want to work on. That could be state legislature or whatever you want it to be. So a lot of the details of what that would look like would obviously come from you, since you live there and you know the community better than I do. But whatever I or we can do to help support your activism in that arena, we are totally here for. And then I think just in general too, like issues and policies aside, I am always excited to do like movement building or skill building and training with you all as activists and leaders in your own community. So whether it's around leadership development or, racial equity and inclusion trainings, and like whatever it is that you feel you all might want more resources or training on, through my help, and our organization and knowledge and all the people we work with are excited to also just offer that in general, again, like policy and issues aside. So yeah, I think that's most of it. Questions, thoughts? Mary, did I leave out anything we talked about?
Well, there's 2 things I was hoping that you would mention.
Okay.
The first one is the training that the last big Indivisible email, a lot of people don't read emails from Indivisible, the big one. They'll read ours, maybe,
Sure.
but they don't. But in that one, there were 2 opportunities for trainings for people who are in districts with completely Republican members of Congress. That's us for the most part, you know. So maybe you could talk about those trainings and tell people how to sign up for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Since I'm not good at multitasking, once I'm done chatting, I will drop the links here in the chat if that works best for y'all.
Yeah, that's good.
So this Sunday, I'm excited. I'm helping plan the first hour of this session. But this Sunday, we've got a we've got a strategy session. It's called We Won, What's Next? Visible Strategy for 2021. I'm excited. I mean, over 1,000 people have registered for it so far, which I am grateful for. Not just because of the number, but because I'm hoping that will bring a lot of diverse experiences and perspectives to the training and the strategy session. And I think like that's where the richness is when a bunch of you all who are on the ground and have been on the ground are like leading these discussions. And, you know, there will be a lot of time for kind of cross-group discussions and things in the training. But yeah, it's what it sounds like, essentially. It's kind of a really just deep dive into our strategy with a bunch of y'all as group leaders and activists there to talk with us. And there's a bunch of our staff, pretty much from every department, that will be on there as well to troubleshoot and strategize with y'all. And then, as Mary mentioned, there are 2 different kind of paths of follow-ups. So we have 2 sessions for people with blue members of Congress and 2 sessions for people with red members of Congress, just as sort of follow-ups from the strategy training. You don't have to attend both. Like if you can only do one of the follow-ups and you just really want to dive in on that, that is perfectly okay too. So I will send links to those, but it should be, the training this Sunday, it is 4 hours. So it should be pretty in-depth. I'm sure I'll learn a lot from it too. And then you said there were 2 things, Mary. What else should I talk about?
You would ask me about the NCN, and we're a member of that, but we never really did much with it. Can you explain what that is to everyone here? Because, I mean, I have my own questions too. And is that something that you guys are still going to keep going?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes. So the NCN, it stands for the National Campaigns Network. Like most things with Indivisible, whether you're a part of it or not, is pretty informal. It's not something that you can like get kicked out of or anything like that. But essentially it exists for groups that want to focus on federal work. And that may be y'all and it may not be. And either answer is equally okay. The reason it exists is basically to allow us to kind of know, you know, who are groups that want to basically focus on the federal level and who are the groups that don't. Both are important and good. I think like an example for me right now is, and this is a Georgia example, so I'm sorry, but it's just a recent example in terms of how it's actually helpful. So right now with our 2 new senators, we're hoping to do some actions around that and hopefully talk with them very soon about democracy reform. And since that's a statewide campaign, what we're hoping to do is have leaders and group members from Indivisible groups around the state of Georgia all have like a lobby meeting or a town hall with them. So NCN, what that allows me to do is know, okay, these, 6 groups in Georgia are interested in federal work. So those are the people I'm going to reach out to like plan this event. And they're going to be my first go-tos for the federal work because I know they're interested in the federal work. The other Indivisible groups will definitely be asked to join and involved in everything too, but it just allows for that distinction. And that, so in terms of what that means for y'all as groups is, like if you are a part of the NCN, what you're committing to is, prioritizing federal work when that's relevant. We have monthly NCN calls. So if someone from your group, and you could rotate if you want to, but someone from your group attends those calls, they're just 1 hour once a month. And then doing some action once a quarter that's related to our federal priority. So that would be, you know, democracy reform this quarter, for example, and it can be whatever you want. But that's it. So that's kind of what it means for a group to be a part of the NCN, and also, you know, sort of the how we use it or how it's useful in our planning and that sort of thing. So I hope that's helpful.
Anybody have any questions about that? Does anybody remember? Because I know a lot of you guys have signed up for the National Indivisible email list, and I'm really picking my brain here to remember if we were ever asked to do anything at a national level. I mean, I'm sure we were. And we probably did it if it was a call-in day or go to an office or something. I'm sure we did, but I think everybody here.
Mary, I know sometimes that when we were writing postcards or doing telephone calls, that the information came from the national level.
Okay, so we are kind of in it with, and you're right, it's informal. So, you know, we kind of pick and choose. Thank you, Warren. And hey, nice to see you.
Great to be here.
So could I make a comment? Because Abby had said she kind of wants to get to know us.
Yeah.
And I am a relatively new legal resident of St. Johns County. I've been coming down to St. Augustine for, you know, forever. But one of the things that attracted me to our group is, if you look at the sort of vision, it's nonpartisan. And my sense is that the national group seems to be perceived, at least, as being very closely aligned with the Democratic Party. And we live in a very red county. And so I've always thought, at least as a goal, trying to appeal to NPAs, if not disaffected Republicans, is still a worthy objective. And so I just want you to be aware of that. And I, you know, frankly, looking at the national level, I think the Lincoln Project really helped defeat Trump. So I think there were some people that just, you know, don't totally buy into the full Democratic agenda, but said we're better off with that than with Trump. So just wanted you to be aware of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And y'all are not alone in that by any means. And I think that's a really good point. I think, and this is one thing that the guide makes clear too, which I think is related to what you're saying. Which I have many thoughts floating around. So I'm trying to think of how to structure it in a way that actually makes sense. But yeah, I mean, you're exactly right that, like, typically right now we're a progressive organization. We're not a capital D Democrat organization, but the reality of where we are right now is that the progressives in our politics are Democrats, if that makes any sense. And by all means, if there was a place where Republicans wanted to work with us or with Democrats, you know, on progressive legislation, we would definitely welcome it. But you're not alone in the perception of Indivisible, and I think, like, our politics are really divisive right now. And I mean, there are some groups who, for that reason too, have intentionally chosen to not have Indivisible in their group name. Like, they're still an Indivisible group and they use Indivisible's theory of change and resources and all that, but for that exact reason, don't want to outwardly identify as it, so that they can do their work and not have this, you know, public divider. I'm not saying you guys should do that, but it is definitely an option that I think is one way to kind of move in that direction and not shut off the conversation off the bat if people have preconceived notions of what Indivisible is.
I just sort of feel like if we, you know, it's still a worthy goal to try to look for common ground and see if we can restore some ability to at least talk and listen to each other.
I totally agree. And I think the distinction there, and I see your hand, Nana, I think the distinction there is that compromise is not the goal, or like unity is not the goal, that the goals are, you know, the progressive values of anti-racism and justice for all and equity and climate justice and all of that. And by all means, if we can work together to get there, definitely yes. But that it's the unity is kind of the means to the overall vision versus the unity itself being the goal. And the guide talks about that too, and kind of lessons from 2009, 2010, and how the Democrats were very afraid to be seen as overreaching or power grabbing. And so really slowed down a lot of their work, watered down a lot of their policies for the sake of, look how friendly we are. And that just bit us all in the butt. So again, I totally agree with you that, and I'm someone too who, I don't like division. Like I don't, you know, but I'm also, you know what I'm saying? Anyway, I saw your hand up, Nana, so I'm going to stop blabbering now.
Well, referencing partisan issues, we have one comment in chat from Robin. She's suggesting that our #1 priority to help facilitate vaccinating everyone in the county. Is that anything that we can do anything about, you think?
I don't know. I don't know that I have a good answer for that. I know, as in line with democracy reform, our other very short-term focus is comprehensive COVID relief, and we're all in favor of the most aggressive, the most comprehensive COVID relief possible. That doesn't, you know, I recognize there's limits to what policy can do, and then there's the on-the-ground reality. But hopefully part of that comprehensive policy would be supporting a more coordinated effort, you know, to make an impact on the ground there.
I mean, that's a good example of something that shouldn't be partisan at all.
Right.
I mean, the virus doesn't know red or blue.
And Robin has her hand up.
If I could comment on that, I was trained as a social worker, and one of the first things they taught us was that we start where the client is. And it's all well and good to talk about democracy reform, but when people are sick and when people are dying, they need something more concrete to grab onto that's going to get their attention. And then once you have their attention with the smaller issues, then you can proceed to larger issues. And I would suggest that COVID relief falls under several of the things that you outlined. #1, it is healthcare. #2, it's related to climate change, because as we all know, this is only the first of many pandemics that is going to strike the whole globe as a result of climate change. And certainly it's an economic issue, because healthcare is certainly distributed to people in an inequitable way in this country. So I would suggest that those 3 issues alone should make it first and foremost in terms of goals that are facilitated by this group. That would be my suggestion. And I'm totally a newcomer. This is my first time here, but that would be my thought. Now, in terms of how hard it is to get it on the ground, I'm also going to tell all of you that I was at Occupy Wall Street, and I'm talking the original Occupy in New York City. I was there on day 9. And I was there for several days, and I saw a lot of chaos, but I saw people that were dedicated to getting something done. I was there a month later. I had to go back to West Virginia, but then I came back a month later. And in that month, I saw them, they had established a library. They had established a healthcare center where they were giving people flu shots and shots for shingles and other types of healthcare. And this was arranged on the ground by on the street activists within the period of 1 month. Now, with a pandemic of this nature that's this severe, certainly we as an enlightened group should be able to get the people that are 65 and over that are residents of our county and our state a vaccination so they don't get sick. To me, that's a priority. And forgive me for ranting and stepping on my soapbox, but I am an activist from long ago, and this is very important to me. I have been trying to get an appointment for a vaccination at least 20 times on various websites, on Publix, on CVS, by registering on a phone without any success whatsoever. On the other hand, I have read reports that 43,000 non-residents of Florida have received vaccinations here. That is not right. Part of that is because there has been a failure at the federal level. But ultimately, it comes down to what can we do as a county? And again, forgive me for ranting. I'll mute myself.
Good rant.
I agree. No need to apologize. Those are all great points. And we're glad to have you here, Robin.
Thank you.
That kind of speaks to when Abby was talking about the national campaign, the NCN stuff, is because we definitely have to get rid of Rubio, Rutherford, Waltz, and DeSantis, and Stevenson, and Renner. But let's talk on the federal level, at first, and get rid of Rutherford, Waltz, and Rubio. We must. So I'm hoping that Abby will be able to bring us some tools specifically to go after our congressmen and our Congress people and our senator, because they're useless. They are absolutely useless. They're harmful.
We need to turn Florida blue.
I'm sorry?
We need to turn Florida blue.
Yeah. Just like Georgia.
There you go.
Just like Georgia. We're going to be Georgia. Well, Abby gave us a lot of information. Does anybody have any questions about where Indivisible is going? Because some of you have read the guide. I thought it was pretty positive. No questions?
Well, I haven't had a chance to read the guide. I sort of have many irons in many fires, but I will try to do that. One of the things that I'm finding disturbing, I mean, again, I'm a retired Fed, and actually I'm sitting in Northern Virginia right now. We go back and forth. I'm a legal resident of Florida. My husband's still working in Virginia. The kids are up here. So, the issue of accountability, I mean, maybe one of the things we can do if we want to turn out, I mean, Rutherford voted to overturn the election. Mm-hmm. I think we need to make those people pay for violating their oath. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. To uphold the Constitution of the United States. And so, I mean, I found that outrageous. So, I mean, is there any plan? I mean, is Individual going to work on that issue of accountability as part of the sort of democracy prong?
Yeah, and I was copying and pasting links for a moment. So please, if I'm not answering your question, feel free to butt in and tell me I'm not. I mean, in full transparency, I wonder, as like an activist who is new to Indivisible, what accountability means. I think it looks a lot of different ways, and I think it depends on the type of district that you're living in. In terms of at least like the recent stuff, objecting to the Electoral College, or, not coming out against the insurrection that we saw, we are very much supporting. I mean, obviously we supported the impeachment of Trump. We're supporting his conviction and him being banned from federal office. A lot of our groups, we don't have any formal like tools or phone banks set up around trying to get the seditious caucuses. I don't know if that's a formal term or not, but that's what we're calling them. But, getting them to be removed from office. And again, we don't have any central resources for it, but a lot of our groups have done like statewide sign-on letters that they've given to the press. There's a bunch of LTEs, letters to the editor. Like we're supportive of groups doing that. We're not offering like central resources for it or phone banks, like I mentioned, but very much support it and agree that none of those people are qualified to hold office.
Okay, you're on. You've got the camera.
I mean, our former governor, Rick Scott, voted with the insurrectionists.
Yeah. Yes, he did.
This might be the perfect kind of a thing to write a letter to the editor in a lot of papers. The fact that both, Rutherford has not only been part of the insurrection, but if my memory is right, I don't think he ever introduced a bill when he's been in Congress, but he was the primary sponsor. So he sort of, you can almost write a letter saying he does nothing, but the only thing he has been active in is participating in this insurrection. Just a thought.
I think that's a great idea. Yeah, and I think especially in the virtual times that we're in, the more you know, whether it's letters to the editor, or the more you can have things to compile sort of a booklet of someone's record as we gear up for 2022, it is great. And just in the short term might make an impact. One can hope, but at the very least will hopefully have an impact in 2022. I know you all have a couple big races coming up in 2022.
Abby, thanks for your talk tonight. I haven't read more than the headline on the strategy, but I've been involved, I guess, in politics here in this county, St. John's, and in environmental actions for since I retired from the Foreign Service 9 years ago. And I would say that the weakness and the concern that I have is taking short-term tactical measures as a substitute for strategy. In the long run, which is what young people that I talk to are continually saying to me, nobody thinks long-term. It's all about today. So here's my thing. If you don't attack and do something about the lying propaganda media that fuels these idiots and liars and seditionists, then you don't get anywhere, because they're watching their AON now, America One News and Fox News. We used to have an FCC doctrine that said equal time. So if you're going to bash Democrats for half an hour, you have to bash Republicans for half an hour, and then let people decide which bashing they like best. But we don't take structural views. If you don't talk about national service for 2 years, we don't have any chance to capture the youth and pull them away from their sucking into propaganda circles and little echo chambers, and we don't get a chance to put them to work. Now they can be in the military or they could be in non-military, but you know, countries that hang together have national service. I was Peace Corps volunteer in South Korea. Nobody evaded the 2-year service, and if they did, they got such social shit for it, they gave it up and decided to go do it. Switzerland, Australia, a lot of, I'm not sure about Australia, but countries that don't ask anything of you to be a citizen, to enjoy all those rights, they don't get anything. And so we need to take long-term views. That's what strategy means. If somebody's selling you a strategy and it's all going to be done within a year, that ain't a strategy. Strategies take long-term, they take fundamentalist, systemic points of view, and then they go for it. The other stuff can, you know, come along and go. But for me, if you're not talking about long-term systemic change and attacking the fundamental inequities and problems that we have and getting the truth out, then it's really hopeless. That's my point of view.
Absolutely. And while this isn't what you were saying, Chris, I do think I forgot to mention, and I'm so sorry, that racial justice is front and center at everything that we do. And when you think about those 5 priority policy areas that we named, racial justice is critical to all of them, and is largely the reason we even have to talk about them and have to work on them, is largely because of the racist system that's been designed. So I just wanted to mention that. I know it's not what you were saying.
Back on racial justice. You know, it's amazing to me, if you look at the history of our county, you never saw black-white couples here in the 60s that weren't fighting stone throwers or people running them off the beach. We have at the individual, personal, romantic, mercantile exchange level of relationships, we see blacks and whites and Latinos and blacks and whites and Latinos getting together. But politically, they've gone back to the 1930s, blaming the other guy. Now it's the immigrants. So, I mean, I think you have to be really careful. I feel that the way the Democrats are playing social justice and racial equity is, it's like a game, you know, we're about minorities and you're not, so vote for us. It's just, you know, like white people on top. Now it's the reverse, minorities first. It doesn't sell because it's logistically and logically, it's incoherent, okay? So go back to Animal Farm. Everyone is equal, except, no, I'm sorry, 1984. Some people are more equal than others. So what we want is equality, and that's defensible morally, historically and traditionally. It's defensible to say that everyone deserves an equal chance. It is not so defensible. It is not so politically, popular and going to go anywhere to say that some people need to be accepted more first. People aren't just buying that. So I think we need to be really careful about that. And when we talk about social justice and equity, poverty is poverty. It doesn't matter what color your skin is. If you don't have food to eat, we're concerned, we're taking action. So let's be really careful about that and not get trapped as the minority party that doesn't care about white people.
Yeah, I think a couple of thoughts that I just personally have there are, one hope for me coming out of this election is that parties stop taking racial blocks for granted, regardless of what that racial block is. I think this election taught us that that is not the case. And it's not right to do that in the first place. Like, regardless of someone's situation, you need to earn their vote, and you shouldn't take their vote for granted just because of a certain demographic that they belong to. In terms of racial equity and being anti-racism and all of that, so much discussion could happen there. So thank you for bringing that up. And I won't say too much on it. We could have, people probably have entire degrees in this thing, but it's front and center for sure. Because our country was designed to protect white landowners, and that is trickled through every piece of it, and that's just a fact. And it's not that anyone is better than anybody else, but it's that our country has been designed to treat white people as better than everybody else. And so whatever we can do to educate folks on that, as well as work to address and equalize that, we want to do. And I'm sorry if I've missed people's hands being up too while we were chatting. It's hard when we're all in these little boxes, and I just stare at like one box at whoever's talking, and I'm not very good at looking at other boxes.
Abby, I'd like to ask a question or say something about the conversation. Several folks have talked about, I think Vicki did, about getting really down to some fundamental boots on the ground kind of things. I saw that you have worked on food justice in a number of different ways, and that was my career as well. You're the organizer for Georgia. Oh my gosh, Georgia. I mean, good gracious, the state that just absolutely turned everything upside down. That is fabulous. And that was a long-term strategic boots on the ground, doing voter registration and voter education, which any nonprofit can do, including Indivisible. And so I guess my question is, in terms of really core things about bringing more people on and becoming engaged as activist citizens, and I'm sorry I missed that. Maybe that was a part of the five things that you mentioned. But is Indivisible looking at doing that kind of long-term strategic stuff that we envy and seeing what happened in Georgia? And what can we learn from you guys?
Yeah, that is a great question. I think in some ways, with Indivisible's focus being so much on like federal electoral work and policies and mobilizing constituents to, like, our bread and butter is mobilizing constituents to call their representatives to get them to do X, or to make their representative look X way when the next election comes around. Like that's our bread and butter and what we do. So, are we going to be super focused on voter registration and civic engagement? Not necessarily. That said, a ton of our groups, both the folks I work with in Georgia, as well as those of y'all that I've talked to in Florida, a lot of groups are already doing a lot of amazing work, as I'm sure you know, around local voter registration and civic engagement and outreach. And I am like 1000% here to support that. And we've got data tools to like help come up with canvassing lists, and however you want it to look, where it's localized and feasible for your skill sets and your interests as a group and a community, I'm all here for. Also keeping in mind though, too, you know, what partners already exist who are doing that work, and if people are already doing it, how can we support them? So I think it looks really different in every community, but you're totally right. I mean, that was, Stacey Abrams started this fight 10 years ago. She spearheaded a lot of it, but you know, she didn't do it alone either. But she is an inspiration, I think, to all of us, and is the one who 10 years ago was like, everybody put your eyes on Georgia, and nobody believed her. And now here we are 10 years later, thanks to her leadership. So all to say, yeah, go ahead, Vicki.
I was just going to say, maybe we can learn some things from her organization.
Yeah.
And by the way, she has, I just watched it the other day. She has a pretty good documentary out about voter suppression. And again, I'm relatively new to our county, but I mean, I don't know if that's a real issue for us. Maybe some of those of you who have been here longer would know. But the documentary is called All In, The Fight for Democracy. And it's about voter suppression and how it's been a long-standing problem in this country.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, there's so much that can be done. So if that's an area that you all as a group are interested in, you know, focusing, I'm all for it. And I think there's a lot that can be done.
So that's one of the things that we as a group did a lot of, was try to educate the community, and we showed movies on the voter suppression throughout the country and different things like that. And I wish our turnout would have been better, but there's nothing that works better than educating the public about what's going, you know, because most people have no idea what types of voter suppression was going on. And that's one of the things that the Republicans seem to be doing so well, is they don't care how long it takes them to take over something. Their plans are for 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, and they're very patient about being deliberate about what they're doing. And the Democrats seem to be the fact that, okay, all of a sudden, oh yeah, we've got the White House, we're all set now. Well, no, because 4 years from now, they've already planned on the next 15 years, not these 4 years. Okay, let's get this done. So I think we need to look at that a lot more than we have in the past too.
Yep, absolutely.
Hey, well, I'm trying to be mindful of everybody's time. We're about almost 8 o'clock, and Abby, we're going to spend the rest of this session talking about the formation of the leadership team for 2021 and going forward. You're welcome to stay if you'd like. I mean, I really appreciate the hour you've given us already, but you can stay if you like. Otherwise, you know, we hope to be able to be working with you and looking forward to that.
Indivisible.
Great. Yeah, I'll stick around at least for a little bit if y'all will still have me.
Sure.
Hopefully it'll give me a little bit of a chance to get to know some of you better.
Well, I'd like to thank you all, but we do have a big 2022 election coming up. Governor Death Sentence is running, and he's a Trump enabler and an acolyte. And how can we strategize? How can we politicize to dent his armor? Well, certainly, anyway, we need to talk and think about that. That's a big issue for us here in Florida, and maybe nationally too. So please help us, Abby.
You got Marco up also.
Yeah,
right.
2022 is a big year.
Yeah, the twin demons. Twin demons of the Tea Party.
Okay, thank God you mentioned the Tea Party. I've been waiting. I've been dying here. Because they're really the one that's the problem.
Yeah.
Screwed up the whole GOP.
Yes.
So I heard a rumor that Ivanka plans to run against Rubio. Is anybody else, I mean, is there any truth to that?
Yeah, she wants to run against him. That's why she moved to Miami.
Sounds like science fiction.
Yeah.
No, she's actually working on it.
You know, the funny thing is, it wouldn't be a net loss and it wouldn't be a net gain. It would just be the status quo.
The strategy.
Well, at least, unlike Scott, at least Rubio did not support the insurrection.
That's true.
He's still useless.
That's a least.
Yeah, that's true. But you know, it's sort of like the lesser of two evils.
Yeah, but we can do better.
We can do better.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm kind of excited if Ivanka runs against Rubio, because otherwise he's going to get through that primary with no competitor and not spending any money. I want him beat up and broke by the time that primary is over, so we have a good shot at him.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yep.
Oh, in case anybody because Marie doesn't come on our calls often, but she's the number genius. She used to be behind the blue wave, and now she's at our DEC. And if you ever want to know how many votes we have in this county, down to the person and how they voted, she's your girl. She's absolutely amazing. So
you're a woman,
Marie. She really helped us out. What you didn't know, Abby, is that we didn't go with we might have talked about it, but the group may not know. We didn't go with the Indivisible Get Out the Vote program because it rolled out too late. Blue Wave was already stood up like 3 months before. I sat in on a couple of the trainings and did a comparison and just made a unilateral decision to affiliate with our Blue Wave Coalition, even though we are nonpartisan and they were primarily Democratic. The affiliation gave us a little bit of wiggle room and we didn't spend any money like we weren't supposed to, you know. But that gave us the venues to go out and knock on doors. They had all the turfs cut, they had all the phone lists, they had everything. And it was just a remarkable collaboration. So we were very lucky to have that. And we're really lucky to have Marie in the DEC now too. So we're going to be doing big things in St. John's is all I'm telling you, Abby, because this is a no nonsense leadership.
But you know, Mary, I agree with all of that. And it's great to have Marie joining us, Mary Garnes. I mean, not Marie, Mary Garnes.
Marie.
And, but I will say that Get Out the Vote, you know, theoretically was going to produce more Democratic wins. It did not. There's too many damn white people that listen to Trump and Fox News in our areas. I'm sorry. It's just not our winning strategy. So we're going to have to go deeper and be more strategic, I think, if we're going to dent things. And I think Marie would agree with me on that.
Yeah, we have two problems. Democrats underperform Republicans in turnout consistently. Although here in St. John's, we've made great inroads in that, but they still beat us in the last election by 3 points. The other thing is they've been doing a much better job with voter registration than we have. So those are two big areas for us to work on. And I do appreciate the long-term approach. I feel that's a big area that the Democrats have really fallen down on. And I think we need a long-term strategy for judges as well as other things. So I'm really proud we got 2 circuit court judges elected in each one in the last 2 cycles. So we've got to work on our judges locally as well.
Well, let's get into the hard part. No decisions are going to be made tonight, but I want to advise everybody that your leadership team, 4 out of the 5 are stepping down for various reasons. Some are just exhaustion. Some are, personal or complicated. So we have needs that I'm going to enumerate right now. And in the email that you got today from Indivisible, and where the donate button was, is supposed to be a link to a survey. So as you go about your business, if you would please fill out the survey, we would really need that to see if we have anybody we can recruit. None of the stuff that the leadership team does is brain surgery, okay? Especially when you've got a good team like I did, where everybody takes one thing and does it. For example, Margaret, who's on tonight, has from day one practically run our Facebook. That's huge. I don't like Facebook. I don't do Facebook. There's just no way. and anything that we're doing, whether, you know, it's immediate action, she's so responsive. The stuff goes up. It's stuff. It's one thing you just never have to check. You just know it's going to be done. That's huge. Okay. We did have a person running our Twitter. When Tampa Bay messed everything up with the Gillum endorsement, then we lost three leadership positions over that issue, which had nothing to do with us. Nobody was going to endorse in the primary, but they got upset. So, so we built back up though. We were running at about 11 people on our leadership team for a couple years, right, Deb? It was about 9 to 11 at any given time for a couple years. But that's Margaret, Chris. But anyway, so now we're down to 5, and now we're down to 1. Okay, which is Margaret. Well, actually, we're down to 2 because Andrea DeGeorge is our MailChimp email person, and she has agreed to continue on, even though she's having her 3rd child and is homeschooling. So she's busy, but she's, again, reliable. She's out of town right now and got that email out with the links properly today, and she's in North Carolina. I mean, these 2 women are just remarkable, and they've kept us going online for forever. Our Twitter was run by Joan, and she walked away when the Gillum endorsement started. So I picked it up and got it up to about 5,000. And then she said she'd take it back, and then I didn't see much. So I started another one because I didn't want to hurt her feelings. And there's only about 500 followers on that. And I'm basically a lurker, but you know, we put stuff up there. So there's that. So I'm not really that, although Twitter is becoming more important to us. We might want to think about that. On state only legislative, the bills and the committees and the stuff like that, we are so blessed to have David Johnson, who does spreadsheets for us and sends out action alerts, and they are targeted to you. If you sign up for them, you get an email saying Mary, and it's because, you know, it tells me, and it has the links for Rutherford or Stevenson or whoever I need. This is the bill. Here's the script. We don't like it. This guy, I don't know how he does it, but he's just a remarkable person. He is staying on. So we are covered on the state legislative issues. Okay. So we're covered on Facebook. We're covered on Twitter for now anyway. And we're covered on our email communications. Okay. So those things we're covered on. Nana, who was only going to do the newsletter for a couple months, ended up doing it for almost a year, has a million other organizations and things that she's done. So we are going to need a newsletter person. It's my thinking, because that's a couple hours a week, and you can get input from me or anybody else if you don't have anything to put in it. But, you know, I plan on staying as a liaison for Big Indivisible, unless somebody's got heartburn and wants to do that. I'm happy to give that one up. And the Florida network and the middle tier groups. I'll stay in contact with those people. So if they're going to do an action, like a call-in day or something like that, you know, I usually feed it to Nana. She gets it in the newsletter. So I'm happy to remain as a liaison to those other groups, because I can fit that into my schedule. So we've got liaison, we've got state legislature, we've got email, we got Facebook, we got Twitter. We don't have really a presence on Instagram. There's an account up there, but I don't think anybody does anything with it. We need a newsletter person. We need an events organizer. And we have a table, a tent, a bullhorn, a banner, posters, handouts, table tent cards. We have business cards. We have stuff, okay? So we have plenty of stuff for that. So we need an event organizer. And Warren, I'm happy you're here tonight. You still here? Yeah, you are. Are you going to continue with the postcards and letters?
Not like we've been doing it for the last 4 years. I think that what I'll do is that when there is something that's really hot that needs to get out there, then we'll augment, and I'll put it out there so that people can do advocacy on that, but not on a regular basis.
Oh, so you're not going to do
the rest of you all. There's other things out there that I'm going to be doing.
Yeah, okay, so how should we, well, we don't need to decide this right now. When you fill out the survey, can you note that?
Sure.
In case, you know, because maybe we tag team with somebody else, it won't be so much on you because you have a million other organizations you work for too. And then we need somebody that's going to actually take the lead on setting up Zoom or in person, if we can, meetings with our members of Congress and our state legislators. I tried for a year, not last year, but the year before, to get somebody in District 6 to set up a meeting with their rep. And I'd go with them so they wouldn't have to go alone. I had all the talking points and everything else, and nobody ever did it. I tried 4 people that lived down that way, and they just never got back at me, right? So we missed ever going down to see Waltz. I don't even know where his office is, but I mean, he's still part of St. Johns County, and it affects us, and you know, so we're going to need that too. So those are the positions that are coming open. I would encourage everybody on the call tonight to, you know, check out the survey. There will not be a newsletter this week. You'll get your regular Indivisible St. John's email, and it'll have the blurb about, you know, your leadership is transitioning right now, and we are looking for new leaders. It's a very simple survey. It'll take you 2 minutes to fill it out. And Deb has graciously volunteered to tabulate the results, and then we'll do the follow-up calls if we get people interested in taking on any of these positions. But the cool thing is, number one, I already told you it's not brain surgery, because if I can do it, anybody can do it. But we got this, okay? And this is, I don't know if you can see that, it's got everything you need, pages, not that many pages, I think there's 10 pages here, but it's everything you need. Plus you have a wealth of institutional knowledge between Nana, me, Margaret, Lynn, Deb. We've been doing this for over 4 years. There's a few others of us, and Warren, he knows everything about writing and the local issues, which is great. So there's a lot of resources that you can pull from. We're not going to just ask somebody to take something on and hang them out to dry. We're going to, you know, train them up and then let the new leadership take over. So that's the hope. So we're going to put a week's time limit on this survey, which will come out Sunday or Monday, one or the other, whenever Andrea gets back. And we're hoping that it's going to go out to the whole list of 776 people, about which maybe less than 10% actually click through and open it. And hopefully we'll get 20 or 30 responses to that survey that we can follow up on and transition the leadership to, you know, some new blood and stuff. So does everybody think that that's a good process? Because that's what we kind of came up with when we all met last week. I'm not hearing any no's. Everybody's on mute though, right?
Sounds good to me, Mary.
Oh, thank you. Okay. All right. Well, so that's what's going to happen then. Starting Sunday, email goes out. People fill out the survey. Forms come back. Deb tabulates them. We follow up, and then we have a meeting again, probably beginning of February, or not beginning of February. What am I saying? That's next week. We'll have a meeting again at some point and bring the new leadership on and explain to everybody what's going on. Does that sound like a plan?
That's good with me.
Sounds like a plan.
That's great.
Any addition to that plan? I think I'm missing something. What am I missing?
You're missing if what we do if we don't get any responses.
Well, that's a possibility.
Meetings will come.
That is correct. What do we do if we don't get any responses?
Go with the major indivisible.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. You were mumbling.
And I guess it becomes the Florida Indivisible, the whole big group, not just the Northeast group.
Yeah, but then how will everybody know what to do if we don't have a newsletter? How would they get their action alerts to call Rubio and tell him he's a jerk? How will they?
Well, actually, we should be doing it on our own anyway.
Well, yeah, but you know.
No, you're not. No, you're absolutely right. But I know that we do it on our own.
Yeah, so I know you do. I know that's why you guys are like part of the core group here.
So could I just make an observation? is I went to not the first meeting, but I think the big meeting in Ponte Vedra. And when we were starting the organization, and the sense I had is that there was such a range of interests, and the approach was kind of like 1,000 flowers blooming. And maybe there might be some need to prioritize and focus a little bit. I think there are so many things going on. If you have trouble getting people to come forward or whatever, you may want to think about focusing and pairing. I mean, the job jar seems huge to me. So it always has, but I've always been, you know, because I'm involved in other things, and I'm still, although I'm retired, I'm still teaching part-time, you know, I believe in the organization and what we're trying to do, but maybe we try to do too much given the human resources we have. So just a thought to think about.
Yeah. Abby, do you know if Indivisible is going to prioritize these 4 areas?
Could I just weigh in and say, I think Vicki has really said something very astute and important. So, you know, when I look at my mailbox and I get Indivisible say, you know, contact Renner on this, I find emails from Sierra Club, Rise Up, 10 other groups, First Coast, Florida Conservation Voters, 1,000 Friends of Florida, you know, it's such a wide net. It's like, whoa, you know, and which one of these am I going to respond to? Because they're all asking the same thing. I think Indivisibles will succeed as they find their own niche. It's kind of like, you know, Common Cause or whatever. You know, you're about good governance, you're about truth and morality and public service. Those are areas that aren't always covered by every group that has their favorite cause. But I think Vicki has made a fair comment, and I would just say I endorse her comment that finding your niche, you know, short-term or long-term is very important. For example, you know, why hasn't Nancy refused to accept House representatives who have blatantly called for her to be executed and been seditionist? Under the Constitution, you know, I've read that she has the power to not seat them. Then they can go to court if they want and look for their seat. But, you know, people are being wimpy, and then they expect us to stand up and stand behind them. Indivisibles really could capture the market there, and urging people of all parties, people of all stripes that are here, you know, to be responsible, to support the Constitution and the laws, and to support justice. So I think we have a good cause, but it's buried in so many other causes.
Chris, I want to really tag on that. And with Abby being here, I want to really draw on what you've seen in other Indivisible local groups. If there is something that you could say of best practices for local groups like ours, as you can hear us, we're floundering a little bit. We've done a lot of amazing work, Abby, over these last 4 years. But at this point, so what the ones that are really being effective now, the local ones that are kind of like the size that we are in counties like us, what have they done, the ones that are really working well, that has contributed to that? What's their MO?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one thing I want to say too, just in response to all of the recent comments is, I think once the survey goes out and hopefully people step up for leadership, we'll see. That new leadership team should get together and decide what the focuses are for your group. Like, we as national have our areas and our tools and our resources, but I think the most successful thing is when groups choose for themselves what those areas want to be. And sometimes groups choose one area of focus, sometimes they have 10. It kind of just depends. something I would love to help with if or when y'all get to that point, if you want, is like realistic goal setting, kind of like goal strategy and tactics for the year, if that's of interest, to help bring down these big ideas to actual goals, the best approach, and what are the steps to get there. But I think the most important thing is that it's driven by the people in your membership, and that it's driven by the people in your leadership, because the leadership are going to be the ones to actually make it happen and hold each other accountable.
When we started up, let me just say this. When we started up and we called that first meeting, there was over 500 people packed into the Gallimore. The second meeting is the one Vicki is referencing at Ponte Vedra. We had 438 people at that one. You can't do a meeting with that many people. It was a rally. Okay. The third one we had was at Pedro Menendez High School. We had, by that time, the groups had started to separate out geographically. So Ponte Vedra started Ponte Vedra United for Progress. We had a group start in the Northwest. And as Abby mentioned earlier, a lot of the groups along the beaches area did not put Indivisible in their name for the precise reason that Vicki brought up, is that this is a conservative area. Indivisible was looked at as a highly progressive group, and we knew it wasn't going to work here. In fact, when we all sat down to start Indivisible, we looked at Move On, we looked at other groups that were popping up after Trump got elected and everything, and we settled on Indivisible as the most palatable one that we could pull off in Northeast Florida because it was so conservative here. And also, as Vicki's pointed out too, I think it was Vicki, is that I always thought we'd be going after the NPAs. And there was very little interest in the Democratic Party in the past of even talking about NPAs, because as Maria will confirm, I think if you add the NPAs and the Dems together, you still don't have enough to beat Republicans if everybody turns out, right? We'll get that 2-1 split forever. But I do think that independent voters are persuadable. I think we have, like with Chris and Nana and a bunch of everybody almost on this call, we've got the environment is a big issue in our area with this overdevelopment and water quality and stuff like that, that's a uniter. So whatever the new leadership wants to pick as their focus, if they want to go after the environment, that's good, because we can attack DeSantis on that. We can attack Rubio on that. We can attack Stevenson on that. We can attack everybody on that because they don't do anything. You know, they talk a lot. That's about it, and take money away. So we did have growing pains in the beginning, Vicki. We really did. It took us months to plow through those hundreds of emails. We were just a mess. It was just hard. But now we're solid. Everybody, you know, is comfortable. The roles are good. The leadership is good. They're just exhausted. And we need to really turn it over. And like Abby said, let the new leadership team pick. It doesn't have to be environment. It could be anything. It could be, you know, gay rights, whatever you want to pick. Black Lives Matter. I don't care. But I mean, you know, we could focus on that, but that doesn't
maybe
away from the other work.
Just to pick up on Chris's idea of finding our niche, maybe we need to take a look at the county and what other groups may be working on different things, so that we're filling a gap as opposed to duplicating effort.
Well, that's a good point, because I just got an email from the Democratic Party today, and they have at least a co-chair to start tracking the county legislation, which is where our griping is coming from for the development and water quality and parking and traffic issues and stuff like that. So that's a good thing, right? So we can collaborate with them, and we could pass off our state information to them if they don't have anybody following state legislation. So we've got partners. We've got partners that we can work together with. And so that's a good thing.
Yeah. And I think I want to second all of that as well. And I think, Vicki, you raised a good point that maybe it's the new leadership team who some of the first things they do is they, you know, reach out to existing partners or reach out to new partners and spend the first month just having these calls where you figure out what are you doing and what would make your work easier, like what's missing. And as you all get a bigger bird's eye picture view of what's missing, that might help guide where you fit in. Mm-hmm. I think there's so many ways to do exactly what you all are talking about, just depending on the direction you want to take it. But yeah, these are all really good points.
And she liked the survey, by the way.
Yeah.
I saw the survey. She said it was a good survey, so that's cool.
It's nice and specific.
Yeah, we were specific. One last thing I wanted to mention too is finance. Lynn, we have a business account Advice Star, which has very little money in it right now. We had to open it in the early days because people were handing us cash like nobody's business. And I was very uncomfortable, having that responsibility and stuff. So Lynn is the co-signer on the account, but that would need to change. But being a treasurer is not really a big deal. We also have a lot of money in Act Blue from all the years of, because we're in their fundraising plan with the matches and stuff like that. So we do have some funds that we can still use. And that just involves basically saving the receipts and doing a report once a month. That's not hard. They make it really easy for you. You just upload a scan or something. So it's very simple to do that. And it's nice to have them in the background too, because they'll put the brakes on anything you try to do that's like against FEC regulations. I don't know them all, but the people at Indivisible do. So if we want to spend money on postcards against Rubio, they're going to say, no, you need special permission because that's a federal race. But, it can be done, but it's going to be a process. So, we'd rather just spend our money on local stuff, which we have been, and especially with Warren's great efforts with the postcard and letter writing campaigns. He's just been amazing, just amazing what he was able to accomplish these past couple of years. So that's, I'm looking at the time, it's almost 8:30. I really feel like I've talked too much. You guys got to come back at me with something.
One quick thing about just tossing up the issues out there. Diane Battle was on this call. She is kind of a one-person force of nature in northwestern St. Johns County about clear cutting and about protecting trees. And if there is an issue that is a hot button issue that people across the political spectrum in this county really give a damn about, it is clear cutting. It is, we are destroying our tree canopy. You want to get at that from an environmental point of view, we are absolutely cutting down the carbon absorbers and we're putting it out into the atmosphere. So it's an issue, and there was somebody here that would be interested in working on that issue.
Good.
Yeah, I think that's Virginia Quelch and her husband. They're both veterinarians in town, and they've come to a number of meetings to raise concerns, and they've been very active in the tree canopy protection. Right. And I would say that, tag on to what Warren said, there's some rays of light and hope. The LAMP, which is funding for land conservation, was passed by 3 of the commissioners in St. Johns County. 2 voted against it. What a surprise. But we got 3 votes and it passed. Nana knows about that. It was pretty darn impressive. So maybe with those 3 commissioners, as amenable, the tree canopy thing could go.
That's a kind of a really nuts and bolts 1 year kind of a push kind of thing. And then you come up for air afterwards and you go like, hey, what happened with this? How did this work? And then it's kind of like ready, fire, and then aim, see what pops up. And then you go to the, and see who else is involved with you by that time.
Yeah, exactly.
A whole new leadership group. Maybe.
Well, we're going to do our best. I mean, if we have to start out with 3 or 4, and bring them up to speed, but with all the stuff that we were able to do in 4 years, I really hate to see Indivisible St. John's just basically be a part-time postcard letter writing group, and we won't have anything to put on Facebook. Nobody will be doing a newsletter. The group won't know what's going on with David's state action alerts. I mean, that's, it's a couple hours a week, but it's a great tool if people read it and all the links are there and the scripts are there. All you do is just follow it through. So we make it really easy for people. So it's like Warren said, I think fresh blood and new ideas is going to be key to bringing into our membership back. And maybe someday we will have those big meetings, not the big ones, but the regular ones where we had 50, 60 people in a room watching 1984. You know, if you guys remember that, that was shocking, you know, because who knew? That was like, well, I think in March or April of 2017. And we screened that movie and you could have heard a pin drop at the end because we all knew what was going to happen, and it did.
Well,
So
another thing.
I would hate to see Indivisible St. John's go.
Another thing, Mary, too, is, again, we have done so much, and some things we've tried and they didn't work. But if we had new blood in there, even if it was the same idea that we had, they might have one little thing different than what we did that would be something that would trigger a whole bunch of stuff. And so they just elaborating on things that we did, even that didn't work, but they have a way to make it work, is good to have new blood in there doing that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Agree. Anybody else for the good of the group? Well, thanks, guys.
I don't know if I was able, I don't know if I said thank you enough, but thank you to all of you for having me here. I don't know if I said that earlier.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you, Nana.
Thank you, Mary, for keeping this going.
Yeah, really. Now listen, we recorded this, so and I'm saving the chat with Abby's links. So we'll put that in like somehow, and since we're not doing a newsletter, it'll probably be in your email with the survey on Sunday, okay?
All right.
All right. Everybody good?
Yep, we're good.
Keep up the good work, y'all.
It's way past my bedtime, so I'll see you guys when I see you.
Okay.
I love you.
Love you, Mary.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Mary.
Bye.
Thanks
Safe,
for great
everybody.
leadership.
Thank you, Abby.